This is the third session of a tutorial on trapping wild pigs. My name is Myron Tingey. This session will cover the use of unframed panels to form the walls of a corral trap. Framed panels will be discussed in the fourth session. Unframed or raw panels are made with galvanized steel rods, approximately 1/4 inch in diameter. Horizontal and vertical rods are welded together to form a grid, probably using a method called resistance spot welding. These panels are commercially manufactured and sold at farm and metal stores. The common types used for making hog traps are cattle, utility, and horse panels. They vary in dimension from 4 foot 2 inches to 6 feet tall and 16 feet to 20 feet long. They are often less expensive than framed panels. However, they require more effort and time to erect than corrals made with framed panels. They're typically held in place by T-posts driven into the ground. These are ideal for traps that won't be moved frequently, but rather where you wait for the pigs to come to the trap. Strength and suitability of use varies on the type of panel used. Panels for corral construction are the single most expensive component in the installation of a trap, so it pays to consider carefully what you're buying. Horse panels are the strongest and most effective of the three types of panels discussed. They have a 2 inch by 4 inch grid. 6 feet high is the best height, I believe, but you can use 5 feet. They come in 16 and 20 foot lengths. You can take your choice on that. The downside of horse panels is that they are the heaviest and hardest to handle. They're also the most expensive. They're about 3 times more than cattle panels, but they're at least twice as strong, maybe 3 times, maybe more than that actually. Utility panels are the second best choice. They have a 4 inch by 4 inch grid. They come in the same height and lengths as horse panels. They have less strength than a horse panel, but more than a cattle panel. Cattle panels are very economical, and they're upgradable. I would not suggest using them by themselves on a long-term basis, but if you want to get started in the least expensive way, cattle panels are the way to go. This plan was discussed in the previous previous session. Cattle panels consist of 2 rows with grids, the rods spread 4 inches apart, and then 7 rows where the rods are spread 6 inches apart. So a total of 50 inches, which is 4 foot 2 inches. Not very tall for a hog trap. They may be 1/3 the cost of the same length of horse panel. Corrals made with cattle panels will capture pigs. I've done it, but piglets may escape through the large panel grids. Adults may go over the top. I've seen that happen. The panels may be destroyed by frantic pig impacts, and I've seen that happen. Upgrading cattle panels significantly enhances their effectiveness. As previously discussed, you can elevate the cattle panel 2 feet above the ground for a total height of 6 foot 2 inches. And then you can install a small grid panel 2 to 3 feet tall under the elevated cattle panel. One option is to use a horse panel, a 5 foot by 16 foot horse panel that's split in half and then wired in place on the inside of the cattle panel. Second option is to buy a commercially made hog panel, which is almost 3 feet tall and 16 feet long. Third option is to get 2 foot by 16 foot horse panels and then weld them to the cattle panel. I've done that extensively because I had panels of that size left over when making box traps. One thing you can do with this process is to not put the small grid panels in while you're training the pigs. What this does is you've got a 2-foot gap there, and the pigs will enter freely, or at least more freely. In some respects, this setup is like a boar buster, which when elevated and set is about 2 feet off the ground. Pigs can see through, they're more comfortable going in. Also, the pig brig is like that when it's in the training mode. So it's a valuable way of training the pigs and getting them used to coming in. And it also keeps cattle out during the training process. If you are trapping in an area where there are cattle. I will next discuss some installation guidelines for unframed panels. These guidelines can be used with horse, utility, or cattle panels, but I will use a couple of pieces of cattle panel to illustrate. The first thing you need to do is attach the panels together. Now this can be done with the panels upright or laying on the ground. However, if you install all the panels together while they're laying on the ground, it may take 2 or even 3 people to get them up and standing in place. Whereas if you install the panels or tie them together while they're upright, 1 person can do it. You can hold the panels upright temporarily by leaning them against tilted T-posts. The panels should be overlapped 8 inches and orient all the panels the same. In other words, make it so that the horizontal rods are all on the inside or all on the outside. Next step is to attach the panels to T-posts. You can form the corral into the desired shape and put with the horizontal rods inside. This may go without saying, but if you're using cattle panels, be sure to put the small spaced rods down at the bottom. To begin with, drive a T-post at each panel junction. Make sure that the T-posts are outside of the panels and that the studs are facing inward. You can drive the T-posts all the way in past the anchor point if you want, but you don't need to, especially if you're going to move them, move the trap very frequently. You can just put it in a few inches. To drive the T-posts in, you can push the corral panel slightly inward with your foot and then drive the T-post after the panel, after the trap is in shape. And then go back and repeat driving the T-posts every 4 feet. You can secure the panels to the T-post with wire ties or U-bolts. If you make a corral for trapping wild pigs using 8 16-foot panels, you'll have a trap that's about 40 feet in diameter. The surface area will be over 1,200 square feet, which is larger than the house which I raised 5 children. You'll need a lot of T-posts and a lot of wire ties. About 33 T-posts for a trap of that size. And you can hook them together. You can put it all together with wire ties or U-bolts. U-bolts are really a lot more expensive, but they're reusable. There's a couple of kinds of wire ties that you can use. Typically, if possible, I'll use a looped end wire tie. These were originally made, I believe, for installing rebar. They're used extensively when they're in construction for tying rebar together prior to pouring concrete. You can get them in different sizes. The size required to go around a T-post and the panels is probably 8 inches. They rust out pretty quickly, so if you think you're going to leave your trap up for a long time, you may want to get some galvanized double looped wire ties. You can buy those at a variety of places. When you tie panels together at each overlapped junction, you ought to tie the panels together in 6 places minimum. And then when you secure the T-post to the panels, you ought to do that in 3 places. This session of the tutorial on trapping wild pigs has focused on unframed panels for the construction of corral walls. The unframed panels are the least expensive corral panel option, but they are the most work to install and to remove. Consequently, they're best suited for small properties, for semi-permanent installations, and in situations where labor has less value than money. Horse panels are the best choice. They're significantly stronger than cattle and utility panels. They require no upgrading, but they are the most expensive. Cattle panels are not recommended unless part of an upgrade plan. They have some significant weaknesses. Piglets can escape, adults may escape over the top, and they are by far the most susceptible to damage by the frantic pigs. The next tutorial session will focus on framed panels for corrals.